Every time a massive bubble inflates, whether it's the recent frenzy over crypto or the latest rush into artificial intelligence, we hear the same refrain: the old rules no longer apply. In his fiction, Ernest Hemingway wrote that a man goes bankrupt in two ways: gradually and then suddenly. That simple observation turned out to be the governing law of every financial mania in human history. Watching the market peak in October 1929, Albert Einstein noted that human beings rarely learn from the experience of others. We ignore past warnings, convincing ourselves that our current prosperity is built on a new, indestructible foundation. The events of 1929 provide a clear inventory of the psychological traps that continue to drive modern market behavior. The 1920s birthed the consumer economy we know today. Millions of Americans moved to cities and took higher-paying jobs, creating a massive market for newly mass-produced goods like cars, radios, and dishwashers. To sell all those goods, companies like General Motors introduced the installment plan. They broke the long-standing cultural taboo against taking on personal debt, normalizing the idea of purchasing a lifestyle on credit. Wall Street brought that same debt model to the stock market. They offered margin loans, allowing average people to buy shares by putting down just 10% in cash and borrowing the remaining 90%. This high leverage meant that a mere 10% drop in stock prices would wipe out an investor's entire equity. Forced to pay back their loans, investors would be compelled to sell their shares at any price, creating a downward spiral of selling that would eventually cause the market to consume itself. At the center of this frenzy stood powerful men like Charles "Sunshine Charlie" Mitchell. As the chairman of National City Bank, Mitchell aggressively marketed stocks and credit directly to middle-class Americans, pulling everyday workers into the speculation. Behind these spikes were pools, secret agreements among elite speculators trading rapidly to artificially inflate prices and attract retail buyers. Once the public poured their savings in, insiders liquidated. The price collapses instantly, trapping ordinary investors. The Roaring Twenties were pitched as an era of widespread prosperity, but the market functioned as a rigged casino. The wages of the working class directly funded the extravagant wealth of a small elite. By the fall of 1929, the euphoria reached a fever pitch. Respected academics legitimized the bubble, with Yale economist Irving Fisher famously declaring that stocks had reached a permanently high plateau. The Federal Reserve recognized the danger and tried to restrict the flow of credit to cool the market down. But powerful bankers actively fought the regulators, privately defying the Fed's warnings and flooding the street with loans. Ordinary citizens watched this power struggle and chose to trust the optimistic bankers over the cautious government officials. The public saw massive interventions by Wall Street titans as proof that the market was simply too robust to fail. A financial mania only ever reaches terminal velocity when the architects of the system abandon their own caution. The smartest guys in the room had started believing their own fraudulent narratives. That delusion shattered in late October. The market entered the blow-off phase, where sudden, massive waves of selling created absolute chaos on the trading floor. The sheer volume of trades overwhelmed the era's technology. The physical ticker tape fell 4 hours behind real-time trading, effectively blinding every investor in the country to the true plummeting value of their stocks. In the confusion, Charles Mitchell realized his own traders had accidentally purchased 71,000 shares of National City Bank stock in a desperate attempt to prop up the price. They had instantly dug a fatal $32 million hole. Terrified that this mistake would trigger a nationwide run on deposits, Mitchell devised a highly secretive plan. He took a $12 million personal loan, risking his entire fortune just to buy the toxic shares back from his own institution. His desperation mirrored the panic happening outside. As billions of dollars evaporated into thin air, frantic crowds swarmed bank entrances, desperate to withdraw their cash before the vaults ran dry. In banking, confidence is the only true currency. Once that fragile illusion of stability breaks, no amount of elite capital or secret loans can stop the total collapse of the system. The economic fallout was brutal. The crash precipitated the Great Depression, destroying the livelihoods, homes, and savings of millions of Americans who had never even owned a single stock. Subsequent government investigations, known as the Pecora hearings, exposed the deep rot underneath the boom. Prosecutors proved that top Wall Street titans paid zero income taxes during the crisis and routinely bribed politicians with heavily discounted stocks. Forced to act, the federal government overhauled the system. They created the FDIC to ensure bank deposits against future runs, and passed the Glass-Steagall Act to legally separate commercial banking from Wall Street speculation. Major financial regulation is rarely proactive. It is almost exclusively written in the blood, bankruptcies, and ruins of devastating market failures. We are often told that financial markets are perfectly efficient machines that naturally self-correct over decades. But in the short term, they are deeply irrational engines driven by elite power and mass hysteria. Trading platforms have evolved from paper ticker tapes to high-speed algorithms on smartphones. While our tools have changed, we are still susceptible to the same cycles of panic and overconfidence that destroyed fortunes a century ago. If there is one lesson to take from the greatest crash in history, it is this: when financial logic is permanently replaced by pure hype and the fear of missing out, it is time to step aside, before the music inevitably stops.